Welcome to the Divorce Couch. This is Simone, and I'm the divorce coach based in Germany.
I am Salma, and I'm the divorce coach based in London.
We're missing our friend and colleague Claire, but she had an emergency family, you call it thing. So we're very sorry that she's not joining us. What we have now decided is, in order to provide you with information, we are going into a topic which is more directive. Because we really enjoy and appreciate Claire's knowledge on more broader topics. So we have decided, in the plight of the ever-changing, unstable world that just adds to the change of the financial situation in divorce, how did we experience, and what are really practical tips for you to still feel you are having a life, you're still on top of things, and it doesn't feel like the rug underneath your feet has been completely pulled. Why did we think this? Last night I received a letter. It had a lot to do with electricity bills and gas bills, and I now have to pay so much more money. And I have to admit, you know what, that kind of like did something to me and brought me back to the moments when two people split, and if one has a lesser income, there is an inevitable change in money spending behavior, however you want to call it. I don't know. So let's just dive right into it. What's the first thing, Salma, that you remember where you think, yeah, that's where I really had to adjust?
Yeah, I remember thinking, oh, how am I going to cope? How am I going to afford, everything? And I think for me personally, it was very much about, I did not want to make any adjustments to my children's lives. But that only put more pressure on myself because because things needed to be adjusted.
Oh, and this is the crux, right? It's basically the moment we go into resistance in a time that needs to be adjusted. It's a double whammy. Not only do you have your own energy, but now you have to overcome your own resistance, and you still have to go into the challenge of what needs to be adjusted too.
Yeah. So I think one of the first things that I did is, because I had this sort of unhealthy attachment to, well, no, the kids, I can't stop piano lessons, and I'm not going to scale back on football and rugby and all of the other things that the kids were doing during the marriage. I didn't want their experience, I suppose, of life to change, without actually realizing that actually their experience of life was changing. Here's me thinking, well, if I keep everything else exactly the same, I don't know, maybe they're not going to realize what's going on here.
Yeah,
everything had changed. So I think one of the first things I did quite early on was to see what I could cut back on. So I printed off, the last 3 months bank statements.
Yes.
And I got a couple of different pens, and I highlighted everything that I had to pay, like gas bill, electricity bill, water bill, council tax, car insurance, all of the things that I knew that, were absolute, like, sort of living expenses. And then I started going through and looking at what could I cut back on, like, the extra takeaways, or I'm one of those people that can never say no to, when you're walking down the street and those people stop you and they sign you up to charities for, would you like to pay £10 a month towards, this charity or that charity? So I'm one of those people that finds it incredibly hard to say, well, no, actually, I'm already contributing towards so many different charities. And so I had, probably 5 or 6 direct debits that were going out to various things. And yes, it was important to me to be contributing towards those charities, but at that moment in time, it wasn't affordable. So I cancelled those, so that with the intention that, when I am back on my feet, I would love to be able to do them again. And so little things like that, like where could I make adjustments? And, I went on to, I don't know if you guys have this website called USwitch, where you can compare your sort of gas bills, if you can find like a cheaper, maybe not so much now with the current climate, but at that time you could go on line and potentially get a cheaper electricity provider, a cheaper gas provider. I cancelled unnecessary things like Sky Movies,
Yes.
extra things, because all of these things, even though you're saving maybe 10, 20, 15 pounds here and there, but collectively it can make a massive difference on the financial pressure that you're currently under.
Mm-hmm. And I think we know this phenomenon every time we go into the supermarket. Basically, while you go shopping and said, okay, well, is it €2 or £3 here and there? And then you look at the result, and it accumulated to an amount. We think, where did that come from? And I think that's the same for monthly expenses. So I think it's fabulous. So organization is really important. I can only adjust if I know my expenses. And I think by now you all knew how much of a Google fan I am. Nowadays, I think it is so much easier to then keep the expense, but at a cheaper rate.
Yeah.
So there is this is marketing, and I used to work in marketing. The bigger the brand, probably the higher the price. When you look into sneakers, for example, or when you also look into gasoline stations in Germany, we have free gasoline stations, and then we have the big ones. And sometimes it's homework. But you can make adjustments, and we have this saying is basically small animal farms also produce dirt, right? So basically it just reinstates exactly what you said. It's not, there won't be one big ticket, one big item that you cut back on. And I think we don't want that. I think in divorce, and I think I never liked that. I didn't like to feel it is now over, but it's different types I adjusted to. For example, we were really big on having weekly breakfasts. I just couldn't do that, but that didn't stop me from then. I mean, I explained to children that I wasn't in the situation any longer to afford that. But then I said, maybe we can have an ice cream. You know what? The idea is to basically scale it down without losing it completely. I think one of the big tickets are holidays, vacationing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, on a personal level, we have to adjust what it means to no longer holiday on whatever your circumstances were. It is a lot of work to understand that is over. But it doesn't mean we have to resist it and say, okay, well then, I don't want to say the words, then no more holidays. That's not the result, or that's not, I think, the solution. The solution then is, what other options are there? Does it have to be, I don't know, the Maldives? There are options in your country, maybe Airbnb, not flying, taking the train. Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, I think when we get stuck in the anger and the resentment of how our life is changing, but we need to focus really on the memories that we're making. And in terms of, like you said, your weekly routines that were normal, or, the ability to potentially be able to eat out 2 or 3 times a week, which was something that we really had to scale back on, because it just was not affordable for us anymore. And, we used to go on, holiday once a year. I think for the first year or maybe 2 years after the divorce, I just couldn't afford to go on holiday, because, when you look at, I mean, in my personal circumstances, I took over the mortgage. I had to borrow extra money to buy my ex-husband out, which meant my mortgage payments went up. But also at the same time, you're also trying to pay the legal costs of the divorce as well. So you're kind of stuck in this situation where you sometimes feel like your financial situation is never going to recover, right? You're just sort of, I felt like I was drowning in like payments and bills. But if you start, like, it's the cumulative effect of starting to make those small changes. You can still have those experiences with your children, but you don't have to be spending loads of money. I mean, there are lots of, go for a picnic in the park, or look for things in your local area that you can take the children to that aren't going to cost loads of money, but the children can still enjoy. And I'm sure there's lots of different things. Join parent children groups that will, like, we have local Facebook groups where people are constantly posting events that are going on for the community that you can take part in. So I think it's just about changing your mindset and letting go of what you did have, and then learning to accept, right, this is what I have right now. How am I going to make the best of what I have?
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? It's the concept of whatever it is still there. It's the way you make that concept, or how you brought that concept to life. What if it is about taking your children or taking yourself outside for some me time, whatever was, and it has anything to do with money, can still be, I think this is what I have worked so hard on. It can still be upheld, but differently. Same, but different, right? Yeah. And I think, what, going back to what you said at the beginning, if you have a list, and then just look, and even though when you said I stopped the monthly payment for charities, or whether it was an annual commitment, there are still, if charitable is such a big value of one. I mean, you just have to walk outside your door and there are people, homeless people, that, you can give to. So I think that your values can still be lived by. It's just differently.
Yes, of course.
Do you know what I mean? And but I do understand that sometimes the financial circumstances change in a way where, one, I mean, we talk about, I think there is this classic, we call it divorce poverty in women, where you do feel treated unfairly, or I don't know how you want to call it, I don't want to judge it, and then the other one walks away with so much more. That is a completely different topic of whether or not that is fair or not, because we want to just, empower you to not completely feel you no longer can do what you've done in the past. It's just basically adjustment. Even if your budget for birthdays was, I don't know how much, right? I don't want to throw out numbers, but you can still do the same. It's just much smaller. And if you've been, I don't know, you're doing your like M&S, Marks and Spencer shopping, emotionally is probably, this is what you're used to. It's different now to go to a Lidl, for example, but you can make adjustments, and you should. Don't fall into the trap of thinking life is over. It is not. Yeah. And this is a tough one, right? I mean, we want to be so gentle with our viewers, but I think the faster you adjust to this one, the better. And I think this is where you then really teach resilience to your children. If they see you adjust to something that is outside, now we're in the control circles, right? That is outside your control. The quicker you do that, the better the lesson to your child.
Yeah. And I think it's about continuously looking at your options. I know you said, when you feel stuck, and I think that's where we become blind to what our options are, because we're telling ourselves, well, that's it, right? This is my life and I can't do anything about it. And, you know, without sounding condescending, there is always something that we can do about it if we look hard enough. You know, even if, I mean, I remember there was a time where, you know, I didn't want to go out and spend a lot of money on a coat, because I just did not have that in my monthly budget. So I'd never really been in a charity shop before. And I remember walking down and thinking, I'm just going to pop in here. And I found this, you know, fabulous coat for about £10. And I just thought, oh, took it home, gave it a good wash, you know, wore it for that winter. And that really has, in a way, that opened up my eyes, because now I'm a sucker for a charity shop.
Oh, me too. And it's so good for the environment, right?
Yeah,
It's
if I'm going down the high street and there's a charity shop, I will always say, I'm just going to pop in here. And, you know, it's like you do, it opens up a new world to you. But I mean, I have to admit, you know, prior to my divorce, I don't think I'd ever been in a charity shop unless it was to drop stuff off. It hadn't occurred to me, you know, to go and, you know, buy something useful, but it was absolutely a belief system within me, right? And so these are things that, you know, if we have to be open to allow to ask for help and allow to look for help. I mean, here in the UK, I don't know about Germany, but, you know, we have food banks in our local communities where, you know, if you are struggling to do your weekly shop, you can go to these food banks, no questions asked, and they will give you some items to help you get by. So these are all options that are available to us. And yes, sometimes it means that we have to step down and swallow our pride and put our ego aside, because it's not the life that we've been used to. But like you said, these are difficult circumstances and difficult decisions that we have to make. And we just need to keep looking at our options.
Yeah. And as painful as it is, and if it makes you feel any better, I had cards declined at a supermarket. It's awful. I mean, I stood there, right, with my trolley full of food and I couldn't pay. It's, ugh.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it's
scary. It's scary. And you know, the other thing I think that I suppose we can all do is look at what we can do in terms of employment. I know everybody's circumstances are different. You know, if you've been a stay-at-home mom and you have not worked, you know, for a period of time, and this is about looking long-term, right? So, you know, if you're in a position where, okay, you don't have any current skills right now where you could go out and get a job, or you have a circumstance where you've got very young children and you can't go out and get a job right now, but start planning for the future. Right, start looking at, maybe there's a course that you can start brushing up your skill set, or maybe that, you know, you could up the hours in your current role, or maybe you can start applying for a different job altogether that would give you a little bit more financial flexibility. All of these things, obviously, they're completely dependent on your personal circumstances. But don't think that the position that you're in today is going to be the position that you're in 1 year's time or 2 years' time if you start working towards it. Right? I mean, you know, the fact that, you know, we have like sort of retrained to become divorce coaches, you know, it was something that maybe we thought about doing, but again, we had to get up and we had to actively do the courses, learn the skills, reach out, make the connections, take the plunge before.
But it took time, right? I mean, we were already quite ahead in our journey before we then focused, I think, on that career. I have to admit. I mean, because I was a housewife, and then I was asked to work. That's a different episode, though, because that is a mind shift, right? Because you know what? It's not that I laid around lazily and didn't do anything. You know what? I had a lot of going on for me that was unpaid. And then you just, that's a mindset shift. Whereas I think the money focus that we're having here is basically, to wrap it up, is know where your expenses are, really have a look. And I mean, you have to do it anyhow, right? Because, you know, but if you're going into interim maintenance, you need to have some sort of table which says these are my expenses. And then, you know, but depending on whether you get interim maintenance or not, or the maintenance after divorce, you already have it in front of you what your expenses are. And I would think most of these expenses don't need to be deleted. They have to be adjusted.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. See, you know, do go onto comparison sites, compare, see if you can get a better costing for something that you're paying. The only thing I will add is, I mean, I don't know how relevant it is outside of the UK, but definitely look at what support is available to you from the government. Like, you know, universal credits or any kind of, like, depending on your income and your circumstances, there might be certain sort of payments you can get from the government. So, you know, definitely do your research and see if you're entitled to any help, because that will, you know, be able to assist you in getting back on your feet.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big gap that we are covering here, right? There is this 1% woman who's losing everything, and then there's somebody who just had the average middle class income, and it's different. So we're trying to address all of you, and I think the most difficult part is accepting that. We call it here, is basically there is that thing of a societal descent, but we would like you to know that, you know what, you are still deciding whether it's going to make or break you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're not going to get upset every now and then.
Oh.
That is just, you know, how quickly can you get out of it upset?
Yeah.
So homework, unfortunately, lots of organizing. We hope that was helpful. Like, subscribe, and we see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.